know that that will happen. So I'm going to start with small groups. So we've got some new groups starting hopefully in the coming months. We've also got Sam and Andy's group that are going to be restarting. Sam's going to come up in a moment to share a little bit about that as well. And just a reminder that the Seeking the Kingdom is on the first Sunday of the month. If you want to find out more about small groups, there's a board over there. There's little flyers for some of the groups and a list of what's running at the moment. And Marilyn is going to be running a small group leaders meeting on Tuesday, the 21st of January. It's at 7:30. I know it's not super masses of notice, but hopefully you haven't got jam-packed social lives at the moment as it's after Christmas. Hopefully you've received an email about that. If you haven't seen it, check. Sometimes our emails do go into the junk and spam folders, unfortunately. So hopefully you've got one there. If you need a reminder, if you're like me and you need something on the fridge, Marilyn's got some little cards that you can have and just pop it up as a reminder. So that's Tuesday, 21st, 7:30 p.m. for all the small group leaders. Sam, would you like to come up and share a little about your group?
Yeah, we've restarted our group after coming back from Australia. So we started this Wednesday, but as from this coming Wednesday, we're going to be doing the 24/7 prayer course. It's a course that Pete Gregg put together, if you've heard of him, and we'll have time of worship. There'll be a short video and then some discussion questions, and obviously if it's about prayer, there will be prayer as well. So it's at our house. If you want to know where that is, come and see me after 7:30, and we try and finish by 9:30, except when everyone stays around chatting after 9:30.
Thank you. That's great. So if you're interested in Sam and Andy's group, you need the little flyer that's on the board with all the converse on, basically. Right. Let's move on to the second thing, which is essentials training. So I think I did a leaflet thingy, yeah. So Rod has invited some people to be part of a new group that are going to be meeting monthly over the next 2 years. So it's a little bit of a commitment. And it's for people who feel like God's stirring them up into leadership within the church. If you haven't been invited, don't take it personally. If you'd like to come, speak to Rod. So basically, it's going to be following the Vineyard Network's program for Vineyard Leadership Essentials Training. It's really, really great course. It's 7:30 on the last Tuesday of each month at the Bridge. And in between each session, there is also, I think, is it a 1-hour video to watch as well. So half an hour, not even that bad. A little bit of homework in between sessions. But yeah, I think, like I say, if you're interested, speak to Rod. If you think you should have been invited and you haven't seen your email, check your junk or spam folders. It might be lurking in there. Have I got anything else about that one? No, I think that's all. Right. I've already mentioned Luke and Acts. Just if you weren't here at the very beginning, quick recap. So during 2025, we're encouraging everyone to read 1 chapter a week. It works out absolutely perfectly. It's a dream. There are 52 chapters in Luke and Acts altogether. This is something that we're asking people to do in their own time at home, part of their personal devotion and prayer time and reading. We want to encourage people really to dig deeper, sort of be reading through the Bible regularly, trying to keep it in context, build up like that ongoing story, the narrative. So the story of Luke is basically the story of Jesus, and the story of Acts is basically the story of the early church. They're both, we think, written by Luke, although despite the name of the book, it's apparently anonymous, theoretically. He was a doctor, friend of Paul, and what's really interesting is that he was one of the, I think, the only non-Jewish author in the New Testament, so you really get to see things from a Gentile's perspective. The fact that Jesus came for everybody is really a strong message through that book. So it's really interesting. Try, if you can, to either pick up one of these at the back, they're on the welcome desk if you want one, or read it in your Bible and just reflect on it during the week. And as I say, if you have got a key verse or something that's come to mind, God's spoken to you about something, then share it with us. We do want to kind of keep this between, like, gather all of us together in this and share what we're finding. Okay. I think that's everything from that. So yeah, if you want the book or a bookmark to keep track of where we're up to, they're on the welcome desk. Right, the next one. I can't remember if I put it up there. I did. Fantastic. Well done. You're doing a grand job on the back desk. So you may have noticed on your seats that there are some little cards that say, I'm ready to serve. Really, we're just trying to kind of encourage everybody to play an active part, an active role in the life of Southend Vineyard. We know lots of you are on 1 rota, some of you on 2 rota, and I think some of the saints among us might even be on 3. Well done to you, my friends. But we would like to encourage everyone to do something wherever you feel like you can help. I know that not everyone's going to want to help in kids. I know not everyone's fit enough to help on setup. There are so many different things that you can do. And we'd like you to really consider where you might be able to serve in the church. So on the back are some suggestions. I've probably forgotten a few different roles, so I apologise if I have. But on the back, this is not a signing your life away kind of watertight contract where you will have to be on a rota for the next 10 years. This is an opportunity to tick a box and say you'd like to find out more, just find out more about helping on one of these rotas. So we've got various options. If you like waking up early, which I don't, you could be on the setup team and get here at 9. There's also a kids setup as well, which you can get here a little bit later for. I'm sure Natalia would be very glad to have some more people on the team with her. We've got the AVB team, so audio-visual broadcasting team. So that's the techie guys at the back who know what they're doing and I don't. Yay to you lot. They are working their socks off. They're here sort of at least twice a month on the rota, so they definitely appreciate some extra support there. If you like sliding things and turning dials and connecting cables, that's the job for you. Worship team. Always looking for more people. It's just such a blessing. It's a really strong part of our Vineyard identity, worship, and it's a great thing to be part of. So if you'd like to be part of the worship team, maybe speak to Paul, my husband, who's at the back. Wave again. There we go. Or Rod. Okay, the refreshment team. I know they've already put a couple of calls out for help recently. Again, a lovely group to be part of because you get to welcome everyone as well. So although it's a little bit hard work making all the cups of tea, it's a really nice social place to be. You're still in the service, and it would be great if a few more people would help us with that. Service managing. Now, that sounds a bit strange. Basically, we need people to do things like head counts, check for health and safety. If the fire alarm goes off, they're in control and they've got the clipboard, and various things like that, like checking the offering and stuff's put away safely. So there's various roles within that. And there's also a kids managing role, which you'll see, which is, again, it's like head counts, checking that we've got everyone there for the team, helping us when we need people to come and get a parent because someone's nappy's exploded and there's been a punami or something. Also, they do things like putting up signs and getting refreshments ready. Right, we've got the welcome team. If you'd like to join that, you have to get here just a little bit early. I think, is it 10:30? Again, you get to greet everyone, welcoming the visitors, and just sort of, keep in touch with people, see how they're doing. It's a really good place to kind of be able to offer a little bit of pastoral care and support as well. Kids team, obviously the best, so come and join me and my kids team. We are doing things a bit differently now where we've got treasures and kids in together, but we are a little bit short. It's not too bad, but we could do at least 2 more people to join our team, and that would be amazing. If you just got a bit of a gift for being silly, as you can see I manage, playing with kids, communicating God's love with them, then that's the basic entry requirement. Youth team, I believe, are going to be looking for a couple of new people very soon as well, so they're trying to grow what they're doing. If you prefer working with secondary school age children, then that's the team for you. Speak to Alistair. Kids managing, I've mentioned, and pack down. If you're that kind of person like me, I think since I was about 3 years old, I've always been one of the last people to go home at the end of a service. It's just the way it is in my family. We always end up packing down, and that's fine. So if you're a packing down kind of person, then speak to Rod. Or, as I say, just tick these. You can either give them back to somebody like Rod or myself or Marilyn, or we'll put them on the welcome desk, or I think, has the offering basket already been round? Not yet. We can stick them in the offering basket then. Perfect. Many options. If you need a pen, there are some spare ones on the welcome desk. And I think we're on the home run. Okay. Finally, I think there's one more. Latest news. Right. This one's a bit of a vague one, but it's very exciting. So there is now the possibility of a new building for Southend Vineyard on Southend High Street. I know, very, very exciting. I can't say where exactly it is at the moment, unfortunately, because there's still a really long way to go with getting things in place and like feasibility studies and stuff. But we would really love you to be praying hard about this for, wisdom, for clear guidance, certainty, for things to get done and doors to open and shut as appropriate. But we're really excited. It does look we finally have a possible home for Sunday mornings and other weekday stuff and evening things too. So please thank God for that and pray on it. And probably good to let Rod know if you have any revelations on that basis. Right, I have spoken for a really long time. Paul, why? What have I done? Have I forgotten something? 21 days, no, 21 days. Pray, fast, well done. Okay. No, if you want the information about the 21 days of prayer and fasting, there is a leaflet on the back table which gives you the prayer focus for each day. We're over halfway through, so there's hope in sight for eating chocolate again soon. Still don't understand why I gave that up, but never mind. All good. Right. Have a tea, coffee, quick toilet break, and then Rod looks like he wants to just come up. I think they need to stretch their legs. They've listened to me for ages. Okay, go, run.
Okay, right, good morning. Good morning. So we have been looking at Galatians last week, if you were here at the bridge, and we're going to carry on doing so. You might be sitting there this morning having a wonder what on earth, if you're watching online, you won't notice it because we've got screens behind me, but we're looks like in a building site because there's loads of scaffolding here. It's actually because the ceiling's fallen down out the back here. And I just wondered, this just reminded me of sometimes you can put a lot of effort into something and it just falls to pieces. Have you ever done that? Any DIYers here who perhaps spent ages working and doing something? Maybe it's your garden. It could be all sorts of different things that we pour our energies into. Might be your house decor, and it's just disastrously gone wrong. I remember one time when I was trying to stop the floorboards squeaking on the upstairs of our landing, and I was going around with my drill and screws and screwing them into the joists, and I was feeling so proud of myself, thinking, We're not going to have any squeaking now. I'm going to be able to sneak across and late at night. I think we had the kids were very small, so I didn't want to wake them up. And I was thinking, oh yeah, I'll be able to creep in the mornings, and they won't wake them up, and I'll get more sleep. And then I was screwing one of the screws in, and it went straight into a water pipe. And then all of a sudden, this water shoots up and just goes everywhere. And then I'm getting my sellotape and I'm trying to repair the leak. This is what we're looking at today, in that there are things that we can do in life and put a lot of effort into, and it's never good enough. It never accomplishes what we thought we wanted it to. I mean, this could go into relationships. This could go in work. The application of this is massive, and that's what this Galatians passage is looking at, because this is talking. We were looking very optimistic, by the way, doing 2 chapters of these letters every week. This is going to be a hard task, and I think we're just going to need to pull out little gems as we go along. There's no way that we can do it justice. And last week, those little gems, when we were looking at Galatians 1 and 2, were there's a letter that this guy Paul wrote, and he's talking to Christians in a church in Galatia. That's why it's Galatians. And he's saying there's a peace and a grace that is given to you in great measure. And we are called, he was saying, that we would live in this grace. That we experience it, it works its way out in our lives. And it's a grace that comes from God. And towards the end of that chapter 2, he's saying, your old life has gone. He uses the words, looking on the wrong page. I have been crucified with Christ, and it's I no longer live, but Jesus Christ lives in me. He's living in me. Myself, my way of doing things, that's gone, that's distant, that's past. I've come into a new life. And that's what we were looking at last week. And Galatians 3 and 4, which we're looking at this week, kind of carries on that same theme, saying that there's something that has occurred. I love my gardening. And I'm looking forward to when the spring comes, because sort of March time, I start sowing these seeds. I've got a lovely propagator in my greenhouse. It's a homemade one. It's like an old polystyrene box, and I've laid sand in there and some cables, got a thermostat, and there's some metal frame that I've made and riveted together, found that on a skip. I've got some nice plastic sheeting that I've put over the top, and I love it when you put the seeds in those soils, you put that in the propagator, and all these tomatoes, lettuce, all this stuff comes up. All I've got to do is just sow it, water it, and keep the cats off of it. They have a tendency to jump on top and dig it all up, but that's my woes. And it grows of itself, and that's what we need to understand: is that the gospel of good news about Jesus is a message which takes root. You hear the stories of Jesus. You hear the fact that he is full of grace. You hear this story about how he's died on a cross and he takes our sins. And you think, is this really real? And as you start to dwell on this and you allow it to stay there and you pray and you're like, oh God, are you there? What's going on? And what happens is this root, it begins to take root. It begins to sprout. Something happens. And when we then sort of have a faith in Jesus, we think, yeah, do you know what? That's a real living hope. And we put our hope in this, and we become a new creation. And it's like this root, this seed in my soil, it just starts growing. And it grows. And I was cutting down just a couple of months ago these massive tomato plants that are up here because it's grown, it's taken root, and they produced a lot of fruit this year. I'm very impressed. And that is what God does. He produces something. He works in our lives if we hold on to it, and it nourishes us, and we allow it to grow. We end up with transformed lives. Something occurs in you that you cannot do on your own. And in Galatians 3, Paul is talking in verse 2. He's saying, did you receive the Holy Spirit by obeying the law? This growth that you're seeing, this faith that you've got, did that come because you were obeying rules, regulations, because you tried really hard? And he says, of course not. You received the Spirit because you started a new life in the Spirit. This was something that had begun in God in you. And he says, why are you now trying to become perfect by your own human effort? And this was the problem, is that I think the Galatians were almost, here is this gospel of grace, of peace, of mercy, of freedom that they've accepted, they've taken on, and perhaps it's growing slowly. Perhaps they felt as though they're not seeing the results quick enough. Perhaps you've become a Christian and you're thinking, but God, I haven't seen my character change much. I haven't seen my circumstances change quick enough. And you think maybe it's not working. Maybe there's something that's going on that's just wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe God isn't as powerful as I thought he was. And these guys, I'm guessing that they're thinking, we've got to go back to circumcision and all the things that were the law at that time that was really important. I wonder whether they were thinking, surely we've got to do this stuff as well. And that's the purpose of Paul's letter, is he's writing and reminding them and saying, no, you don't have to do this stuff as well. In verse 9, he says, so all who put their faith in Christ, you share the same blessing Abraham received because of his faith, reminding us that there's people way back who have always trusted in God, who have always had a faith in God, this is not a mental, and this is something that I think we've got wrong. It's really bad. Because in the church, we proclaim, we make out as though you've just got to believe. Faith is believing. You've got to believe the right stuff. You've got to think the right stuff. You've got to think about or realize that Jesus died on a cross and he's cleansed you and cleansed you up and cleaned you. If you just think that, you tick that box, that will save you. That will bring you eternal life. And Paul is saying, whoa, this is far more than that. No, this is a work of the Spirit. This is something that has got to be worked out in your life. This is an active faith. This is something that occurs in you, that will continue to occur in you. And this, even Abraham, he talks about Abraham, he talks about him. We're not going to go into that in chapter 4 about Abraham. Even Abraham, he had this faith in God, but he still had to grow. Even Abraham, did he not sort of doubt a little bit when he was told that the angel was going to come and his wife was going to have a baby? He had a little bit of a problem, to some degree over some of those things. When he was in Egypt, there was the time when he was, is God going to protect me? And they had to produce some lies. And yet you see something that started in Abraham's life, that in the end of his life, he's so full of God. He's got such a faith. God calls him to give up his son. And he has no issues with it. It says immediately, the next day, he went up the mountain to sacrifice his son. I don't want to go into the story in too much detail, but what I'm saying is that there was something in Abraham that perhaps was a little bit slower than he realized and what he wanted. But it was something that continued to grow. And it transformed who he was. And we carry on and we look in verse 11 in chapter 3 in Galatians, where it says, so it's clear that no one can be made right with God by trying to keep the law. There is... If you've got a nice long, it's January, isn't it? If you've got a nice long list of resolutions, New Year's resolutions, anyone? Did anyone have any New Year's resolutions? A few? Yeah. I think it's really good. But what this is saying is that there is, you can't be made right by trying to keep the law. You cannot, in of itself, that's not the transformative power because you try harder. He goes on to say it's through faith that a righteous person has life. It is through faith. It is through faith, not of your own. I have had New Year's resolutions. I haven't got any this year, but I have had, and it's like I've desire to really try and do this or do that and do that. My wife would like me to have one to go to the gym more often. But what's happening here is he's saying it's your faith that makes you righteous. It's that justifies you. And then he goes on to say in verse 13, but Christ has rescued us from the curse pronounced by the law. And when Jesus was hung on a cross, he took upon himself the curse of the wrongdoing. He's taken upon, there's something that happened on that cross where Jesus took the curse. Jesus took the guilt. He's taken the feelings of beating ourselves up because we haven't come up to the level that we wish that we had have done. All of that brokenness, all of that disappointment that we can feel in our lives when we've tried really hard. We find that Jesus on a cross is nailed on a cross, and he's saying, I take your sin. I take your shortcomings. I take your weaknesses. I take the things that you cannot do in your life. And what we were reminded of in chapter 2 is that we live a new way. And sometimes as Christians even, we have to come afresh and remind ourselves, I guess like the Galatians, where we've put things in place. We've tried really hard in certain areas in life, and we realize it hasn't quite worked out. Perhaps there is that tendency. I shared with you that for the first sort of year and a half of being, I'm coming up to my second year of being in charge now of Southend Vineyard.